You ever watch a company rot from the inside while you're still holding it upright with both hands? That's what it felt like. And when they finally peeled my fingers off the edge and called it a strategic leadership transition, I didn't argue. I stood up, buttoned my blazer, and walked out of the only place I'd ever belonged. Not because I agreed, but because I knew no one else had the spine to do it with dignity. My name is Thomas Granger. I'm 58 years old. Until 24 days ago, I was the Chief Operations Officer at Hartwell Dynamics, a software and infrastructure firm we built out of a 3-man garage in Arlington back in '98. When we started, we didn't even have health insurance. We had code, caffeine, and the belief that you didn't need to be flashy to be good. Now, Hartwell occupies 3 floors of a steel and glass tower, and the espresso machines cost more than my first car. They called me Old Guard, quietly at first, then more boldly once Malcolm Price came in, fresh from Stanford with a resume that read more like a TED Talk transcript than a business history. The board loved him, young, articulate, obsessed with the words disruption and vision, the kind of guy who introduced himself with a slide deck. His first town hall had neon lights, his second had a DJ. 2 weeks after he arrived, I was asked to step into HR for a routine discussion. I've been in the game long enough to know that phrase means anything but routine. The HR rep didn't look me in the eye. She read from a script like a substitute teacher reading a fire drill notice. I caught one line in particular. After 27 years of service, the company has decided to explore more agile and innovative operational models. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't, I might break something. They offered a package, generous if you looked at it through a banker's lens, offensive if you looked at it through a human one. I asked if Malcolm was going to speak to me himself. The rep blinked. He asked us to convey his thanks. His thanks. After 2.5 decades of turning red ink into black, smoothing over mergers, keeping layoffs humane, onboarding every goddamn intern who now walked past me like I was office furniture, he conveyed his thanks through a third party. I didn't make a scene. That would have made them feel better about pushing me out. Instead, I took the envelope, nodded, and walked back to my office. People avoided eye contact. No one wanted to be associated with what they assumed was a body in motion. Cowards. But I couldn't even blame them. Fear makes you forget loyalty. I packed in silence, a photo of my daughter from her college graduation, a Mont Blanc pen from a merger I once brokered under budget, a coffee mug that said, "Run the ship, don't rock it." Fitting, I suppose. When I got to the elevator, I didn't look back. The first few days were a blur. I tried to read, but my mind wandered. I sat in my backyard staring at the fence. My wife, Elaine, tried to keep things light. She made coffee, insisted we go for walks. She even joked I looked less stressed, like I'd just come back from a spa. But beneath her smile, I could see the worry in her eyes. I wasn't grieving a job, I was grieving a version of myself. On the 6th day, I finally opened my work laptop, just to check if my credentials still worked. They didn't. Instead, there was one final message in my personal inbox from Malcolm. Subject line, gratitude. 2 lines of platitudes about legacy and future thinking. Not even a signature, just his initials. I hovered over the mouse for a second, then clicked delete. No hesitation, no archiving. That's when I walked to the kitchen, poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, at 1 in the afternoon, and sat in the quiet. That silence wasn't peaceful, it was loud. A roar of everything I'd suppressed while keeping Hartwell's wheels turning. Later that night, I got a message from Victor Chang. He was one of the first engineers I ever hired. Brilliant guy, terrible handwriting. His email was short. Saw the news. You were the soul of that place. And they just gutted it. I stared at that line for a while. The soul. That wasn't a word I ever used for myself. I was the engine maybe, the ballast. The guy who said no when the yes men got too loud. But soul? That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because for the first time in 27 years, I wasn't responsible for anyone's schedule but my own. I wasn't waiting for permission to act, to fix, to lead, and I kept thinking, what would happen if I built something, not for Hartwell, not for the board, but for me? That thought stayed with me through the dawn, and by sunrise I wasn't drifting anymore. I was searching for a blueprint, 3.5 weeks. That's how long it took for the cracks to show. I was in line at Baxter's, a little coffee spot a block from Hartwell Tower. I hadn't planned on being anywhere near the building, but old habits die slow. I used to come here every Thursday morning before our executive briefings. I figured I could reclaim the ritual for myself, try to turn it into something personal again. That's when I heard someone say my name. Tom. I turned and there he was, Jordan Lynn, mid-level operations manager, sharp, quietly observant. One of the few younger guys who didn't treat experience like it was contagious. He looked like he hadn't slept, still wearing the Hartwell badge around his neck, but he tucked it into his jacket when he reached me. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, giving me a half smile that was more apology than greeting. "Likewise," I replied. "I thought they installed a cold brew tap on the 5th floor. You slumming it down here now?" He chuckled, then looked over his shoulder before lowering his voice. "You free for 10 minutes? We took our coffees to the far end of the park across the street and found a bench under a mostly dead tree. Jordan sat like someone expecting to be watched. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes scanning the skyline. "He's flailing, Tom," he said. "It's bad." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. "Give me a headline," I said. Jordan didn't hesitate. 2 directors gone in 9 days. Called it a realignment of creative verticals. Total BS. He's hiring marketing influencers with zero tech experience. One guy introduced himself in a meeting by pulling up his TikTok profile. I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds disruptive." Jordan gave me a look. "You know what it sounds like? A bonfire of buzzwords. We've missed 2 internal deadlines. People are scared to speak up. They keep their heads down, hope they aren't next." He paused. "We miss your spine. The place is spineless now." That hit harder than I expected. I always thought I was invisible in those middle-tier meetings. The quiet guy who focused on budgets and logistics while the execs chased shiny ideas. "Turns out, even ballast gets noticed when it's removed," Jordan went on. "The board is getting antsy. The numbers aren't matching the flash. He talks like we're launching the next Tesla, but the wheels aren't even on the car." I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the steam roll into the morning air. For the first time since I left, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. "They didn't replace me with someone better," I said aloud, mostly to myself. "They replaced me with noise." Jordan didn't answer. He didn't need to. We talked a little longer, mostly him venting, me listening. I didn't offer advice. That's not what he wanted. He wanted to be heard, maybe to remind me I still had value somewhere. When he left, he shook my hand with both of his. It felt like a thank you for more than just the coffee. I walked home slower than usual, no rush, just letting thoughts settle. Jordan's words rang louder with each step. "They miss your spine. The place is spineless now." I hadn't opened a work notebook since the day I walked out. It was still sitting on the shelf beside my desk, sandwiched between a few old technical manuals and an unopened box of printer ink. I slid it out, flipped past the first few pages filled with budget notes and merger outlines, and landed on a blank spread. There was a project I'd pitched 4 years ago, an internal operations platform that would unify our logistics, reporting, and client feedback in one adaptive dashboard. It wasn't flashy, but it would have saved us 6 figures in redundancy every quarter. Malcolm's predecessor called it too legacy, said it didn't fit the new brand narrative. I flipped to a new page and started sketching, not just lines and boxes, but the architecture, the logic, the flow. My hand moved like it remembered something my head had forgotten. Efficiency, elegance, quiet solutions to loud problems. Time disappeared. Elaine knocked on the door 2 hours later to ask if I was okay. I told her I was. For the first time in weeks, I meant it. I kept drawing, page after page, refining, rethinking. What would it look like if I didn't have to explain it to a board? If I didn't have to market it to some brand consultant from LA? What would it look like if it just worked? The platform didn't need a name yet. It just needed to exist. Even in graphite and margin scribbles, it felt real, tangible, mine. That night, I sat at the dining table while Elaine read beside me. She glanced over at my notebook and smiled faintly. "Looks like something's waking up," she said. I nodded. She was right. Something was. Something that hadn't stirred in years. The spark wasn't gone. It had just been drowned out by noise. It started with a folding table, 3 laptops, and a space heater humming in the corner of my garage. Not exactly the war room I used to command, but it was ours. No HR memos, no buzzword decks, no brand consultants asking how it would feel on a t-shirt. Just focus. I called it Project Keystone, quietly. I didn't tell Elaine the name at first, just said a few folks were coming over to talk shop. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. She knew me well enough to recognize when I was building something that mattered. The first to arrive was May Alvarez, our old data scientist. She'd been laid off under Nick's operational realignment campaign. In reality, she'd challenged his obsession with analytics as performance theater. She didn't talk much that first day. Just nodded, opened her laptop, and started sketching out a modular back-end with the efficiency of a surgeon. Next was Darren Singh, a product manager who'd been pushed out after a performance review labeled him not culturally synergistic, which is executive speak for he told the truth in a room full of liars. Darren was skeptical at first. "What are we building, Tom? Another startup chasing Series A or something real?" "Something real," I said. "No pitch decks, no pre-orders, just function, trust, and clarity. We make something that works. The rest comes later." He stayed. Jordan came last. He still had one foot inside Hartwell, which made him both valuable and a liability. He didn't bring a laptop, just sat down, looked around at the cluttered garage walls, the cheap chairs, the handwritten notes tacked to corkboard. "This feels more like home than my actual office," he said. Then he pulled out his notepad. "So, what's the first brick in this keystone?" We started with the bones, core infrastructure, modular components that could scale without breaking, no trendy fluff, just clean, functional design. The kind of architecture I used to beg Hartwell to consider before Malcolm decided everything needed to feel immersive. We worked in silence more often than not. When we spoke, it was direct, candid, efficient. No one was jockeying for visibility. No one asked who was in charge. We all knew. But it wasn't about control. It was about clarity. Elaine would bring sandwiches around noon. She never stayed, never hovered, just a gentle smile and a glance that said, "Keep going." At night, after they'd leave, I'd clean the whiteboards and stare at the evolving blueprint like it was a living thing. Because it was. Each line meant something. Every module had purpose. It wasn't built for press releases. It was built for users. Meanwhile, Nick was busy hiring a TikTok visionary as Hartwell's new chief strategy officer. I nearly choked when Jordan showed me the internal memo. Apparently, this visionary had 1.2 million followers and a unique understanding of emerging generational trends. What he didn't have was a single shipped product. Hartwell's rebrand went live the following Monday. Neon gradients, Gen Z slang splashed across product pages. A new tagline, "Future feels now." The website lagged. Users on Reddit called it a marketing clown show. One client tweeted, "I miss when Hartwell just worked." I didn't laugh, not out loud, because part of me still cared. I had helped build that name. Watching them dilute it into vapor hurt in ways I couldn't admit yet. But I also felt something else, clarity. We weren't building a reaction to Nick. We were building the antidote to everything he represented. By the third week, we had a working prototype. Just the basics, dashboard, modular reporting, adaptive feedback loop. Nothing glossy, but solid, reliable, fast. We loaded it onto a private test server one evening and gathered around Darren's screen. No fanfare, no speeches. I watched the system boot. Every click responded. Every function ran like it was supposed to. May ran stress tests on the fly. Jordan checked the data integrity. Darren logged performance times. All green. And then I said it, almost without thinking. "This is what innovation actually looks like." No one responded. They didn't need to. We all felt it. I stayed in the garage after they left that night, alone with the hum of the heater and the faint smell of solder and whiteboard markers. I wrote one word in the corner of the whiteboard, legacy. Not revenge, not redemption, legacy. This wasn't about proving Nick wrong. It was about proving our values right. That substance beats noise. That trust outlasts flash. That when you build for people, not personas, you build something that lasts. We weren't looking for headlines. We were building a foundation. The first sign came as a headline buried beneath the fold in an industry newsletter. Hartwell loses legacy logistics client amid rebrand turbulence. The article was short, clinical, and carefully sourced. But between the lines, the message was clear. Someone big had pulled out, and fast. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Jordan without commentary. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. "Confirmed," he said. "It's Glaive Corp. They canceled the integration contract 2 months early. Said the new interface was non-functional and disorienting. Nick tried spinning it as strategic realignment." "Let me guess," I said. He blamed the client. Called them innovation averse, out loud, in front of the team. I shook my head. I'd seen corporate self-sabotage before, but watching it from the outside was like watching a man drown in a pool he filled himself. The second sign came less than 24 hours later. It was late, nearly 11 p.m., and I was in the garage scribbling launch milestones on the whiteboard when my phone rang. A number I hadn't seen in years. "Tom, it's Gerard Ellison," said the voice on the line. "You have a moment?" Gerard had been on Hartwell's board for 15 years. A quiet figure with sharp instincts and a habit of asking one question too few, then listening twice as long as anyone else. If he was calling me, it wasn't social. "What's on your mind, Gerard?" Long pause. "Off the record?" "Always." He exhaled, almost in relief. "Nick's bleeding us. Morale is shot, revenue's twitchy, and I can't remember the last time I heard a sentence from him that didn't involve the phrase emerging influence verticals. I won't ask what you're working on, but I'll ask this. Are you working on something?" I didn't lie. I didn't tell the truth either. "I'm keeping busy." Another pause, longer this time. "Good," he said quietly. "That's good to hear." And then he hung up. The next morning, I gathered the team in the garage. It was time. No more sketches, no more silence. We were ready. We launched under a shell company, Keystone Ops. No press release. Just a clean, minimal site with access keys for select firms. The platform wasn't pretty. It wasn't supposed to be, but it was fast, intuitive, and responsive. It listened instead of shouting. We sent out 6 demo links that morning. By the end of the day, 2 clients had already booked follow-up calls. By the end of the week, they were both onboarding. May ran the numbers twice, then looked up from her laptop, grinning like she had just broken gravity. "We're in." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. The quiet satisfaction said enough. It was working, not because we were loud, but because we had built it right. Word started to spread. No media, no campaigns, just whispers between managers. "Have you seen that new logistics dashboard? Looks like what Hartwell used to be." Then came the memo. Jordan texted me at 3:17 p.m. on a Thursday. "You'll want to see this." I opened the PDF and read the first paragraph 3 times. In light of increased marketplace confusion and attempts by nostalgia-based imitators to destabilize our rebrand momentum, Hartwell will be hosting an emergency internal town hall this Friday to recenter the team and reinforce vision integrity. Nostalgia-based imitators. I read it out loud and chuckled. Darren smirked. May looked up from her server logs and said, "Guess we hit a nerve." Friday morning, we gathered in the garage again. I cast the town hall live stream to the old flat screen we'd mounted against the garage door. Nick walked on stage in a blazer 2 sizes too tight, standing beneath a digital banner that read, "Future Fluent. Brand bold." He looked tired, eyes too wide, smile too controlled. His voice trembled at the edges as he delivered a 15-minute monologue that felt more like a hostage video than a vision statement. He talked about synergy, about market energy, about fighting off imitators of a legacy mindset. He didn't mention our name. He didn't have to. Then someone asked about the client losses. His jaw twitched. "We're trimming excess," he said. "Some legacy partnerships simply can't scale with our ambition." Jordan texted me one line. "He's unraveling." I didn't reply. I turned to the team, pointed at the board, and said it out loud for the first time. Now we go loud. That night, we updated the Keystone site. We published a simple case study. No spin, no jargon. Just a timeline, a testimonial, and a video walkthrough. By morning, our inbox was full. Something had shifted, not just in our favor, but in the air itself. We weren't in his shadow anymore. He was in ours. We didn't plan for it to go viral. That was never the point. We launched because the product was ready. Clean, functional, solid, something real in a marketplace addicted to spectacle. But when the first video demo we posted on LinkedIn passed 50,000 views in 3 days, I knew something had changed. They weren't just watching, they were listening. A tech columnist I hadn't spoken to in over a decade reached out, asking for a quote. I gave him 2 sentences, nothing flashy. We built it to work. Turns out people still care about that. He ran the story under the headline, "The COO they called a roadblock. Just built the fastest growing platform in the sector." That was the first time my name got attached publicly. I hadn't planned on hiding it forever, but I didn't need a spotlight to validate the work. Still, the moment it broke, the phone started ringing. Former clients, silent partners, board members from other firms. Half were curious. The other half were looking for a way out of the flaming wreck Hartwell had become. By week 2, we had 6 clients fully onboarded. 2 of them had been marquee accounts for Hartwell just 3 months earlier. By week 3, one of Hartwell's seed investors published an open letter calling for leadership review. And by week 4, it was done. Nick was out. No press conference, no statement. Just a whisper through the grapevine. He had stepped down to pursue other opportunities. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His fall wasn't the story. The platform was. The morning after the board vote, I got an email. Plain text, no branding, no signature. Just a line from Jared Ellison. "We'd like to explore a conversation about your potential return to Hartwell in a consulting capacity." I read it twice, then closed my laptop. I didn't respond that day, or the next. On the 3rd day, I opened the message again, hovered over the keyboard for a few seconds, then hit delete. No hesitation, no drama. I wasn't angry anymore, just uninterested. They wanted me to come back and fix what they'd let rot, to polish the bones and repaint the trim and pretend the walls hadn't already collapsed. But I wasn't their repairman. That same afternoon, I walked past Hartwell Tower on my way to meet Elaine for lunch. The building looked the same, glass, steel, polished marble floors. But it felt different, hollow. A new poster hung in the lobby. It said, "Resetting the Vision." No one looked up as I passed. No one recognized me, and I liked it that way. Back at the office, our office, still tucked inside a converted co-op warehouse on the edge of town, Darren was on a call with a new logistics partner. May was testing the next deployment module, and Jordan was laughing over something in our internal thread. Sunlight poured through the cracked skylight above the shared table. We had 4 desks, no HR department, and more traction than I ever thought possible. I looked around the room and let myself feel it. Not pride, not revenge. Peace. We hadn't taken Hartwell down. We'd simply reminded the market what competence looked like, what trust felt like. We hadn't built flash. We'd built foundation. Elaine stopped by around 4 with a bag of warm empanadas and a 6-pack. She kissed my cheek and handed me the food without a word, then winked at May, who grinned and cleared a corner of the table. We sat. We ate. We didn't toast or cheer or even talk that much. We didn't need to. We knew where we'd been, and more importantly, we knew where we were going. Later, when the room had quieted, I stood up, walked to the whiteboard, and erased a tiny square that had read, "Soft Launch Phase, Week 5. I replaced it with one word, underlined once. Building. That was our goal now. No press, no panic, no reaction. I turned to them, my team, my people, and said, "We don't go back, we build forward." They nodded. No applause, no slogans, just a shared truth. I wasn't the roadblock. I was the foundation they never understood. And now, finally, I was free to build, without asking for permission.